Hey, Brandon from Lanyap here. I'm going to be setting up a home lab here with this equipment. This is my demo system that I use for work, all Ubiquiti. And so my home lab setup is going to be all Ubiquiti. Essentially, the idea behind this is I want to set up something where I have the ability to put in a hypervisor and play around with Home Assistant and other home lab related services, maybe Pi-hole, things like that. And so I want a system where I can do that, right? And so this demo system here that I have for work is great. And I can still use it as a demo for work while also using it kind of as a playground, home lab sort of environment where I can test and play with things. The great part about it is I don't have a lot of production stuff hooked up to it. I don't have any production stuff hooked up to it. And I'll be able to reset things just willy nilly, and which is what I'm about to do now. I'm going to go through with my reset tool, which I have here. My reset tool is a paperclip. And so there's a little reset button. So there's reset button, reset button, reset button, and you just hit it with the paperclip. It'll factory reset the device. So I'm going to factory reset everything you see on this rack. This whole thing, factory reset. And then I'm going to go through and bring you guys along with me and sort of show you, okay, here's how I set up this device, right? Like Dream Machine. Here's how I set up a Dream Machine gateway, right? Here's how I set up a switch. Here's how I set up a NAS, right? So everything here, I have other things I'm going to put on this rack. I got a power amp, a Ubiquiti power amp. I have a Ubiquiti telephone. So I have different Ubiquiti devices, and I'm going to set it all up. And, you know, all of this stuff is just my stuff that I have sitting around. This isn't sponsored. It's just I had this great idea of like I want to try home assistant, so I need a home lab. So let's go ahead and make one, right? Like let's just and yeah, this is a whole lot of Ubiquiti, a whole lot of Ubiquiti. And so you know, some people like Ubiquiti and some don't, but I run Ubiquiti a lot. You can see this entire rack behind me is all Ubiquiti. I'm actually going to be pulling UAS, Ubiquiti Application Server, out of that rack and sticking it in here. You can see I've started to take the Keystone out. I'm going to put the UAS server there. That's going to be my hypervisor for the system. And then we're going to go from there. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to just start filming some stuff about me taking all this apart, resetting it, and then we'll get started with the home lab. It should be fun. So as part of this, I have dust covers. Dust covers are important. Not really. I'm a little OCD with things. You can actually see here with my Keystone, I actually put in blanks whenever I don't have actual keystones to put in. I just like to cover up holes and make sure everything looks nice and neat. What I really should do is replace this with the 24 port switch. However, I want to make sure that I have enough 10 gig ports so that I can plug in the hypervisor and everything else that goes along with it. So I'm going to keep the 48 port, the USW Pro Max. I'm going to keep the USW Pro Max in there with the 48 port, just so that I have enough 10 gig ports on the edge over here. That's all. Okay. That's that. Now, I'm not gonna. I don't know. Should I take that out or should I not? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so I got the Keystone out. Now we're going to put a hypervisor in here, which is a UAS application server, Ubiquiti application server. I'm going to stick it right there. This guy here, it's hard to see, obviously, from the camera, but essentially, this is a double-sided cube at the moment. So this is the Ubiquiti toolless rack, okay? So the idea being that there's these little thumb screws on the side that you don't need like a screwdriver or any of that kind of stuff for this. But what I've done is on the back side of this, since it's symmetrical on both sides, like it's identical on both sides, I actually have panels, blank panels on the back, as well as a Ubiquiti power distribution unit, PDU. I have a Keystone here that connects to this Keystone here. So I have wires between the two Keystones. Stupid, I know. But it's so that I can plug something into the back of it and it pops out here and goes out of that Keystone directly in there so that the wiring can look beautiful. Part of this is I want it to look pretty and be all just self-contained to where I plug in the internet, I plug in the power, and the whole system just turns on, lights up, and just works. That's the point of it being a demo system. Yes, it does weigh a metric ton. Not a metric ton, but like it weighs like, I don't know, 60 pounds, 50 pounds, something like that. And so like I got to carry it with both hands and like a straight back. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab the application server out of my production rack back here. And we're going to, because I'm not using it at the moment, we're going to stick it in here, turn it into a hypervisor for the demo rack, and go from there. Whew. And there we go. Okay, so UAS out. It did have these 10 gig SFP ports on it, which is good. And then of course had these guys. I like these, but the plastic, this bit here, I guess it bends in and then just stays that way. It's not very good at staying out, like those little arms. So they don't work amazingly well, but they're pretty good for cage nuts, I guess. They're less hassle than a normal cage nut, but once you go to take them out, like take the screws out, they just fall right out. Like they don't stay in like a cage nut should. So they're great if you're not going to do much with your rack. They suck if you're going to change your rack a lot. Okay, so let's look at this real quick. Let me pull this camera down. Yeah. Okay, so this is our UAS. This is the hard drives here. These are just the 4 terabyte Iron Wolves that I've put in there. And so I'm going to just open this thing up so you guys can sort of see what the inside looks like. I think it's really cool to sort of know, like, okay, this used to be an application server for Ubiquiti. Now I pretty much install hypervisors on these things. They're great little application servers. They match the style of the racks, the UNAS and all this stuff here, this thing. These are all the same sort of drive bays that you'll see in these. Slight differences in color and design, a little bit, but generally similar. So this one here, you actually see you have to screw these in on the side, where this one is just a pop-in version. So the older Ubiquiti drive bays are screw-in. The newer ones are just pop-ins. But yeah. Let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what's inside. I'm going to move the camera a smidge so I can work. But it should be all right. So yeah, let's take a look. Okay, now that we have the screws out, move those over a smidge so they're a little out of the way. And let's open this guy up. See what's inside. Okay, so basically inside of this thing it's more or less a super micro computer. It's got the shrouds on it and stuff. You can see here that in the back it's got a 10 gig port. Yeah, they're RJ45s. Power over here. You got your RAM lined up here. It's got room for 4 RAM sticks. And it looks like, yeah. So those are 32 gig sticks in there. So that's 128 gigs of RAM. Single CPU on it. And then this little device here is for the ports in the front. Now the ports in the front are interesting. When I got this, the front ports here, the USB ports, if I can get that to focus a bit, maybe, I don't know. The USB ports in the front were actually bent out of shape. So I actually had my computer repair guy buy new USB port things and solder them into that board. And so now they work. So that's good. But yeah, so generally speaking, that's the inside of this thing. Nothing spectacular. You got room here for extra drives. Looks like 2 already plugged in here for these 2 drives here, which are the hot swap bays. Here's your M.2 right here. It looks like it only holds 1. And so then there you go. So you got an internal M.2. You got 2 drives here on the bays. And then you have this device up front that has your USB ports and your on-off switch and stuff like that. The light, that the little display light thing, some people wrote scripts and stuff for that online for how to manipulate it and make it light up blue instead of just blink white. I'll play around with that a little bit. I'm not overly concerned about it. I don't really care. This is our power thing. There's this little shroud on it. You got looks like an exhaust here, partially covered by the shroud, which is weird. And then these 2 blow straight onto, one blows onto the RAM and one blows onto the processor. This thing here looks like it's kind of in the way of that fan. I wish I could move that so that it's not so much in the way. That's kind of works a little bit. I don't know, now it's kind of on that pin over there. I don't want it to be on the pin, but I can't pull it out any further. Well, that's unfortunate. It's kind of in the way of the fan, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. The big thing here is you got those extra ports for hard drives or whatever, but no real room for that. So, you know, one thing you could do is you could take the hot swaps out, maybe remove the cage for it, and put serial ATAs, like solid state drives or something. Put solid state drives here so that you can utilize more of these ports. But I think it's fine the way it is. I'm just going to use it like it is. This is generally what's inside of it. I've upgraded it, the RAM, obviously, to 128 gigs. It doesn't seem to have an issue with that. I've upgraded the M.2. I don't even know what size this one is. Yeah, it doesn't really say. But yeah, so I've upgraded that. That's pretty much it. So now I'm going to put this back together, now that we know what's inside of it, and let's put it in our system and start resetting everything. So this is essentially just just the initial build out, right? So this is just sort of setting up the rack, resetting all the devices so that things can be configured and things can be set up properly. And so now that we've sort of seen what's inside the hypervisor and sort of what I'm working with here, we're going to go ahead and plop it into this rack. We're going to set it up. We're going to reset everything, and that'll be that for today. Then we'll move on to going through the process, right? So we'll start with like, let's set up the Dream Machine. Let's set up the switch. Let's set up the hypervisor. Like, let's get each thing set up. And the reason we have to go sort of in that process is because, yes, we have the hardware, and that's great. Like, slide the hypervisor in there. Should we be ready to go? Almost. If we go to set up a hypervisor, we need a static IP, which means we need the network set up properly to where we allocate those static IPs, right? So we're going to go through the whole process. It's going to be a great little home lab system by the time we're done, and it'll be fun to go through it all. So let me put this in there, and then we'll wrap up. So I'm going to slide this in there. Thing to note is the toolless mini rack. You don't actually have to do much. It just goes into this hole in the middle here with the little screws that are on the rails. And that's pretty much it. My concern is this thing big enough? Yeah. So it doesn't go all the way back into the rack. It's smaller than a pizza box, which is great, which means that it's only going to go about 4/5 of the way back into these rails, which leaves me room in the back to plug in the power and do that kind of stuff. So let's slide this guy in. So, it's not the middle holes, it is the bottom holes. Same thing. There we go. Now we have a hypervisor. I need to plug it in. Okay, I had to go to the other room and get one of these. You can see the little braided, not braided, but like this textured cable here. These are the newer Ubiquiti power cables that have the little locking mechanism on it. Now this guy doesn't have that locking mechanism. I'm actually wondering if this will fit in there. I don't think it will. Not that I'm wondering. It's one of the reasons I like the toolless mini rack. So I was trying to figure out if this newer version of the Ubiquiti power cables will fit into the older version of the Ubiquiti device. And it does. Okay, so that's good. So the newer versions of these cables have the little locking mechanism on it. And so I was just making sure that fit. And see, okay, I have this brush panel, so it won't go that way. So I gotta go through the brush panel, then plug it in, then stick it in the mini rack. It's a whole thing. Okay, now I can slide it into the mini rack. Alrighty, I want to also just really quickly show you guys the back of this thing. So now we have our hypervisor in there. We need to plug it in, and I want to quickly just sort of flip this thing around. These are all the patch cables I took out that we're not going to be using. That went to this Keystone, which we also will not be using. And these are the hard drives for the NAS, which we will be using. And then these are the 10 gig SFP connectors, which we will be using. Fiber connector, doesn't really do anything. But you will see that on the Keystone here, I put in a fiber Keystone just because I like to show my customers and stuff that, hey, you can run fiber through your building and use it for like run fiber 300 feet that way to plug into another switch or whatever. And you can still have it built into your Keystone so that, you know, it all just looks nice and is integrated correctly into the infrastructure. So I'm going to flip this this thing around so you guys can see the back. So we'll sort of walk through the hardware as it is now, and then we'll get started with like, let's set up, configure, and get rolling with it. So let me grab a few more things. Okay, got a few more things. I know what I'm going to call this video now. I'm going to call it the Ubiquiti Home Lab because, good Lord, it's all Ubiquiti. I have a lot of Ubiquiti. I like their products. I like their concept. Their, how they operate, what they do. I like a lot of their stuff, their touch screens and all that jazz. So lots of Ubiquiti stuff. My home lab is going to have to walk through it, we're going to have a Dream Machine as the gateway. This is going to be where all the applications, the network application, all that stuff is all served off of this. This is going to be my Keystone, where anytime I have a device that needs to connect to the system, it is going to come through that Keystone. Next, on the fourth unit, I'm going to have a switch. On the third unit, I'm going to have a hypervisor. On the first and second unit down here, I'm going to have my NAS. Then, on the back. Okay, then on the back, we have the power distribution unit. That's where all things are going to be plugged in. Here's the hypervisor that I just installed, this guy. So we'll plug this into the next one here. And you can hear it start up maybe. And yeah, again, the reason I had to go this way through the brush panel was because this plug here is too big to go through this brush panel. This brush panel is kind of thinner than some as far as the size of it, because it's got these thick sort of metal pieces here. And so you kind of have to use the other side of the plug, which is a little bit narrower. It fits through it better. And so it's easier to go that way through the brush panel than to pull things out through it this way. This is the power cord that connects this power distribution unit to the actual outlet. I'm just going to lock that wheel. I don't know if you saw that wheel was hanging off the edge there. So on the bottom on this side is the NAS. On the bottom on this side is the power distribution unit. There's that much space between the two. Just enough space to pull the power cord out through the brush panel and to also plug in the NAS. Because the power cable to the power distribution unit is like coming out of the box here, and then you plug in the NAS here. It's like side by side, and there's that much room. So like it comes out of the power unit, goes up, and then comes down from the brush panel and goes into the NAS. It's a very tightly built system, right? Blank panel, Keystone. This connects to the other Keystone in the front. I have custom cut Cat6 cables that go from these ports to those ports. So when I plug something in here, it connects to the front. Blanks there, brush panel there. That's the entire back. So now you see the back. You see how that's set up. This is the connection to the power distribution unit so that I can manage the power through my Ubiquiti gateway. So this will be plugged into the Keystone, like directly. And then these are the devices on the top up here, and these will also plug into the Keystone as I go. Outside of the rack, we also have a Ubiquiti power amp that we're going to use on this system, as well as a telephone that we're going to use on this system. Now, as I keep going, I'm also going to add a doorbell with a chime and things like that, because one of the things, my goals, is to control all of that using the Home Assistant system, right? So when someone hits the doorbell, I want Home Assistant to know that someone hit the doorbell, and I want that to send a signal to a different speaker, like one that I set up, like my own system, right? So we'll see how that goes. I don't even know if it's possible, but we'll see how it goes. And as we go, we'll learn about Home Assistant. We'll learn about Proxmox. We'll learn about all these Home Lab features, and we'll build it all out using my Ubiquiti Home Lab. So that's the plan. Stick around for the next one where I configure the Dream Machine as the first stepping stone to getting the rest of the Home Lab set up and configured. So that's it for this one. We got the equipment installed correctly. I went ahead and plugged in the PDU. That's the one thing that's lighting up there. And yeah, now we're gonna get started on configuring our Dream Machine and just going down the list of getting the system set up properly. Again, highly focused on Ubiquiti. but we'll see how it goes. I might end up throwing in some other systems into the mix, but yeah, leave me a like, subscribe, and let me know what your thoughts are on different things you would like to see in a hypervisor, what type of things you like to do with Home Lab, and what, maybe some thoughts on how I can implement a system where I am connecting a Ubiquiti doorbell to my own chime, essentially. That's my ultimate goal. Don't even know if it's possible. So stick with me. We'll run through it and figure it out together. At the end of the day, I'll have a home lab with a hypervisor that's running services that I can utilize. So either way, it's a win-win. So yeah, stick around. Thanks. Appreciate it.